Marcus had never known who he was. He had been alone all of his life, or at least for what of his life that he could remember. In the past, this fact had bothered him. He spent much of his early years as a young man seeking answers. Why was he so painfully different? Why did he suffer a duality of being that set him apart from other tieflings? And what did it all mean? Having no family to speak of, he wandered the Mistkeep, taking in the world for over decades of his search for answers. Dwarves were long-lived beings. Perhaps one of them knew something that could grant him some semblance of clarity. In time, however, finding no answers, he settled to a life of reclusive meditation, hoping to find his answers in the spiritual aspects of life. Yet, even then, no answers came. And so now he lived alone in the mountains. He no longer sought answers. He simply wished to live his final days in peace. This was his life now. At the end of the road, he sat cutting wood, tending to his meager garden and fishing a nearby lake to feed himself, and his one and only companion, Uriah, a dog that he had found in his travels. These old boys, as he referred to them, were simply living out their ends of days in peace, content to exist in their own effort for a little bit of time, for whatever little time they had left. One peaceful night, Marcus and Uriah sat by a fire, peaceful and happy in the small cabin that Marcus had built. The winter wind raged outside and a persistent whistle through the chimney as it kind of lulled the pair to sleep. The crackle of the fire, as well as its warmth, proving to support this motion as Marcus's eyes grew heavier and heavier. "Wake," a hissing voice said, startling Marcus from his half-slumber. As he looked around the room, his surroundings were wrong. The wind no longer whistled, the flames no longer danced, and the snow outside his window stood suspended in the air, as if frozen in time. All but himself and Uriah had frozen in space, as a creeping dread set over him. Uriah, still sleeping peacefully at his feet, seemed unconcerned, or at least unaware of the voice that had woken Marcus, or of the pair's current circumstance. As Marcus took a breath, the air was ice cold, and he exhaled his breath in a plume of freezing mist that dissipated in the air in front of him. "You. Destiny," the hissing voice said again, its owner unseen as Marcus looked around the room. Marcus's own voice caught in his throat from fear. "Kill," the voice rattled, just next to Marcus's ear. He could feel breath on the back of his neck, not warm, but cold, as it sent goosebumps down his arms. He felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "No one has to die today," he choked out. "Tell me who you are." He swore he heard slithering in the room, just behind him, behind the chair he was sitting in. But when he looked, there was nothing there. Yet a candle flickered in an unseen breeze, almost like someone had briskly passed it by. "Consequences," the voice rattled. "Consequences. Made oblivion." "You say you are Oblivion? What business does Oblivion have with an old man like me?" Marcus asked. The slithering stopped somewhere in the room, the creature unseen even still. "Sins, father, destiny," the hissing voice said. "My existence, your existence, incompatible." "So Oblivion visits me at the end of my days to inform me that my existence cannot be allowed?" "Yes." "Then Oblivion may be in luck. My end is soon. I haven't much time left." "No," the voice hissed, almost angrily, the frustration palpable. "Then what? Oblivion wishes to hasten my end?" Marcus asked with a chill up his spine. Soul exists incompatible. The voice growled from across the room. The words washed over Marcus like a chilling tide of ice. His soul could not be allowed to exist. He didn't know much of matters of the soul, but he knew that he died when his soul simply left and would fall into the domain of one of the gods if he was lucky, moving to their domains in the outer planes. Oblivion comes to claim my soul. And what does Oblivion want with it? Consume! The voice bellowed in a tone that shook the room. Cups rattled across the table and shattered on the floor. For a moment, the flames flickered and the wind howled, and the snow fell once again before freezing back into place. Marcus felt an icy grip on his throat, a hand bony and hard, choking the life out of him, lifting him from his seat. The unseen force growling, and the lights dimmed as candles went out in the room around him. The flames of the frozen fire dipping lower in the presence of some sort of unseen evil. Marcus's lungs were burning. He was being strangled in his own home, and he couldn't even see his attacker. Consume! Nephilim soul! The voice rattled, the sound mimicking his own gasps for air. His dying gasps, Marcus realized, echoing in the voice of his attacker, as he felt the warmth of his own body waning, almost being drained away by the cold hand of his attacker. No, his killer. A face flickered into view, becoming clearer and clearer the weaker he felt. This face, dark, taut skin stretched tight across the bone of a horrific skull, glowing purple eyes that burned with a hatred that overwhelmed him. This face, with an open, hyperextended, bare mandible, had pointed canine teeth that extended into wicked points. A bare skeletal body with black feathered wings filled the room otherwise. The form of this creature seemed to grow second by second. A small glowing light drew in the mouth of this creature, growing as a silvery glowing mist was drawn from Marcus's chest. His life force, drawn from him, flowed towards his attacker, through the air, slowly, like smoke. As the light began to fade and Marcus began to slip into darkness, he heard a snarl and a bark as his loyal friend Uriah leapt to his defense, clamping down on the arm that held Marcus with the jaws of this snarling dog. The creature recoiled for a moment, releasing its grip slightly on Marcus's throat, and the momentary influx of air rapidly cut off, granting Marcus enough of a chance to see his dog Uriah hanging from this creature's arm. And fearing for his dog's life, given this intervention, granted him the chance to slam his own arm down on the creature's, trying his best to defend his one and only friend for all this time. But it was not enough. The skull's eyes shifted to Uriah, and as the jaw closed, the other hand rose and slammed against the old dog, sending him flying across the room and falling in a heap against the wall. A hearty chuckle rose from the creature as it threw Marcus across the room as well. As he flew, Marcus saw a full form of the creature. A skeletal human with black feathered wings wearing golden chains and jewelry and low loops around its chest. With the visage of a mostly rotted corpse, the face and body is covered only below the waist by black velvet in loops and bones and chain. Slamming into the wall, Marcus's vision went black for a second, before falling beside Uriah in a heap. His vision blurry and spinning, he saw the specter of his death flicker out of sight, invisible once again. Marcus was alone in the room. Slowly, as his vision returned, he took a moment to take stock. The room was wrecked. He couldn't feel his legs, and his left arm was bent the wrong way at the elbow. As he took this stock, the chair that he had been sitting in shifted as if pushed across the room by someone. Scattered items on the floor began pushing themselves in directions, almost as if an unseen person stalked towards the pair. Pushing himself in front of his loyal dog to protect them, Marcus felt his eyes grow heavier and heavier. Taking a shaky breath, Marcus smiled. He's weak. He stands no chance against this thing. But he doesn't have to. Taking one last breath, he sees the figure one last time as it stands over him. Hand extended, jaw open, reaching, and Marcus breathes his last. The creature screams in anger, tearing into the body of Marcus out of frustration, which Marcus watches from across the room, sitting in his chair with a sad smile. Sitting there in his chair, hand on Uriah's head, as they sit there together. After a moment, watching the creature, in its own rage, absolutely destroy the home around him, Marcus stood, adjusted his coat, and smiled before turning and walking out the door, joined by the spirit of Uriah, the loyal dog. This spirit disappearing into the night and into the afterlife, intact despite the creature's best efforts, accompanied by his most loyal friend.